Welcome to Your Family's Health, the program that focuses on healthcare issues with unique and different modalities for taking charge of your health today. Experts talk weekly with our continuing roster of guests from around the country and right here in Nassau County to keep you up to date on the latest health issues and trends. Take care of your mind, body, and soul. Spend the next half hour with the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC, and get on the journey to better health.
Hello and welcome to Your Family's Health. My name is Dr. Jeanine Cook-Garard from the nursing department here at Nassau Community College, along with my co-host Virginia Gavin. And today we're talking about nurses in media. Our guest today is Barbara Glickstein, a public health nurse, health reporter, and media strategist. She is the founder of Barbara Glickstein Strategies, a training company in media, leadership, and advocacy skills. She produces HealthCetera, a podcast that provides evidence-based health news, analysis, and commentary. Barbara, welcome to Your Family's Health on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC.
Thank you.
So first, please tell us more about you. What made you want to get into the media industry?
Well, thank you. And I'm excited that you're here co-hosting today. I love radio, and I love knowing when nursing students are engaged in this platform. It's a great platform. I'll go back to being raised in a family home of working class parents who always read the news, had newspapers delivered to the home, and discussed news and civics and engagement as community people growing up. So I've always seen the media as a platform for raising issues of concern for individuals, families, and communities. So I want to acknowledge my parents for that. Secondly, I went back to nursing school and graduated, and in my senior leadership course, I decided that I was going to make a video documentary about nurses and political action. And when I asked my then professor, Dr. Connie Vance, who then became the dean of the School of Nursing at the College of New Rochelle, if my senior project could be a video documentary, she asked me if I ever did that before, and I said no. And subsequently, and now we're colleagues and friends, she thought, oh boy, okay. I said they could do anything, so there she goes. And I did co-produce and co-direct and create a documentary with another nursing student, Leslie Stein. And that not so great made in terms of it being a talking head, but certainly because I was addressing 4 nurse leaders in New York City, where I live, who were, through their clinical expertise and their interest in policy, made some very serious impact on the state and city level. And I got invited to be on a radio program that was a collective of nurses producing for public radio here in New York. And at the end of my interview, before I left the studio, I asked them if I could join. And that was the beginning of my 35 years of being a nurse, public health nurse, and media maker. And I today still am working and using megaphones, digital media, social media, radio, and when invited on TV, to be sure that I use every platform to educate the public about the role of nursing in our multiple ways that we contribute to the health and well-being of our nation.
Wow. So, I'm so glad that you are a nurse and that you are representing media in terms of giving a voice to what nurses do and giving voice to our expertise as nurses. What was your first step in creating your podcast and media training seminars?
I was invited to get on the other side of the mic, if you will. I applied for the Progressive Women's Voices program at the Women's Media Center, which is a center that looks at women's underrepresentation in the media. And so I launched the radio program, which was first called Health Styles, and along with my colleague, Dr. Diana Mason, and are starting the Center for Health, Media, and Policy at Hunter College, and then subsequently working at George Washington University's School of Nursing, where we worked at the Center for Health Policy and Media Engagement. Throughout that time period, we were producing live radio and taped radio. And as we moved off of public radio, we changed our format to podcasting, which here we are in this wonderful venue of radio and talk radio, but podcasting is a different technology and different production. And my interest in radio and podcasting is aligned with my interest in media training, but I have gone to workshops. One of them was accepted into something called Work It, WERKIT. It's a podcast training for women podcasters, and I did that training as well as working with other collaborators and journalists on learning technique in podcasting. The media training piece, just separately, but again, aligns very deeply, I was a Progressive Women's Voice fellow, and during that experience, I learned to be on the other side of the mic through some excellent training, media training, and I've adapted that media training to provide media training for nurses nationally and globally.
You're also a co-investigator of the Woodhull study revisited, which replicated the original research published in 1998 that looked at nurse representation in print media. What were the key findings?
Yes, we did replicate this study, and that replication of the study is published in the Journal of Nursing Scholarship in December of 2018. I want to acknowledge the principal investigator and co-investigator, Dr. Diana Mason, Laura Nixon, who is the senior media researcher at Berkeley Media Studies Group, Sarah Hahn and Laura Cutler, who are research associates at the Berkeley Media Studies Group, and Dr. Christy Welsfin, a pediatric nurse practitioner and postdoc in nursing and policy at Cleveland at Case Western. And this team went back and did a print news analysis similar to 1997. We only did print and did not go to digital space, and so several things. One, many of the print publications from the original study are no longer in existence due to the continued demise of many national, state, and local newspapers. But we increased the number of, we did as best as we could to replicate the way that they looked at this. So our sources were newspapers, weeklies, and healthcare industry publications. And we did a random sample of those articles. And what we discovered is, this is a sort of a spoiler alert, that nothing has really changed. In 2017, that we were only represented in 2% of findings in newspapers and weeklies and only 1% in industry publications. We also found that nurses were mainly quoted about the nursing profession. So whether that was about the shortage of nursing or scope of practice, but they were very absent from stories about health policy, health economics, clinical expertise, systems expertise. So our conclusion of that study was that nurses remain invisible in health news stories. And just briefly, there was a second phase to our study that was not done the first time. And we looked at health journalists' experiences in using nurses as sources, and that research is published in the American Journal of Nursing in the October 2018 issue. I co-investigated that with Dr. Diana Mason and Dr. Christy Welsfin. And we basically, our high-level theme findings, after speaking with 10 health reporters from across the country who are in print, radio, and television, that the biases against women, nurses, and positions of power in the healthcare system really do get in the way of journalists using us as sources in health reporting.
Wow. So what is it? Why do you think that nurses are so underrepresented when it comes down to representing the issues?
I believe it is about sexism and positions of power and hierarchy. It is not unusual, or sadly, it is consistent that women experts across fields, including foreign policy, economics, you name it, and you'll see more men use as sources. So first and foremost, we must speak and address to the fact that nurses are important to the perspectives in health reporting, but we're missing, and we are mainly women. Also, the other thing that we found out is that journalists don't really understand the range of nurses' roles in our work and our education, which is why we must elevate our voices and make ourselves available and pitch stories to journalists, because when journalists better understand what it is that nurses do, the public will. It's the role of the free press and democracy that reporters better understand us. Therefore, journalists will use us as diverse sources, and they'll be able to better not only use us as experts, but help the public better understand through that sourcing what we do. Journalists also can't find us. Some of them expressed real concern about nurses who don't get back to them when they are trying to use them as a source, or they can't find us because we're not Google searchable or easily found with our contact information. The other key finding of our study on journalists was that the communication staff of healthcare organizations and universities, they're not offering nurses as sources unless journalists ask for them. And in some instances, even when journalists ask for a nurse, they were given a physician. So we have editorial biases, policies, and processes that are getting in the way of using nurses as sources. And I would like to also suggest, because this is a multi-threaded strategy that we must take on, that we have to be more strategic about engaging journalists. And here you are, two nurses, creating media, producing media, getting your voices out there as experts, co-hosting and producing your radio show.
Very good. You have spoken to health reporters about diversifying sources in health news reporting. What kind of reactions do you get generally?
I love doing that, first of all, because I don't think we can always blame them for not doing their job. Mm-hmm. Those who have used nurses in their stories report that it changed the frame of the story to a better frame. For example, one reporter was covering the issue of substance use and abuse in their community and spoke to a public health nurse working in an outpatient facility addressing the community's needs around this issue, to discover that in addition to the direct patient and provider care, that they were looking at ways to create a more sober social experience in their community, whether it was nights going bowling for youth or having restaurants serve more non-alcoholic beverages, or creating opportunities for youth to be together and adults that were facing recovery and the challenges that not only with alcohol, but with also other substances can create. And this reporter said, I wouldn't have thought about including that in my frame. So rather than just reporting on either the drug treatment program and the responsibilities of the client in staying sober or off of the substance use they were using, that in fact this nurse provided and was connecting the dots to a critical number of other concerns and issues that we know must be addressed in order to address the needs of the populations that we serve.
So how can nurses learn to raise their visibility with members of the media?
Well, one way that I would recommend is to become more media competent. And what do I mean by that? Learn to be someone who reads media, watches media, engages in media, so that when a reporter is covering your issue, your topic, a policy that's critical to you and the work that you do and the people that you're privileged to care for, know them, know who's reporting on that in your local media format, and engage with them. You know, we're human. We love to be connected. We often would meet you for a cup of coffee at the local diner and have an opportunity to chat with you about what do you think are stories that need to be covered that aren't currently. So that may not be everybody doing that, but that's one approach. The other is in terms of media competency. So one is to identify the journalists both locally, regionally, and nationally that are covering health and follow them and report back to them when they cover something well, and or if they miss the point, you can recommend that that was an interesting story. Let me suggest the next time I'm available to be interviewed, and some of the things that need to be expounded on are X, Y, and Z. The other thing that I would recommend is if you are currently being educated in a school of nursing, or you are an educator, is to look up what are media competencies and begin to include that into your coursework. And that should be across all courses, not just at the end of a student's education where you're offering it in a leadership course. We know that the generations currently enrolled in nursing school, which span several generations, are very media savvy and using media to raise their voice. Let them, encourage them to integrate that voice-raising platforms of Twitter and YouTube and Instagram on behalf of nursing and on behalf of issues that are concerned to them. Of course, everyone is worried about HIPAA and patient privacy. That is a definite. However, we can tell stories and raise policy and concern without it being specific to a patient or family. I believe that nurses have stories to share that are really on the margins and are often missed by health reporters. And health reporters are always looking for good stories. And so if we want to shift the way the world and how we work in it, we have to have the media better portray nursing.
Okay, let's take a quick break. My name is Jeanine Cook-Garard from the nursing department here at Nassau Community College, along with my co-host Virginia Gavin. And today we're talking about nurses in media with Barbara Glickstein, who is a public health nurse, health reporter, and media strategist, and founder of Barbara Glickstein Strategies. You're listening to Your Family's Health on the Voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC.
Are you struggling with vision loss as you get older? Do you have a child who is blind or losing their vision? Are you a blind person wondering how you'll succeed in school, at work, or as a parent? We can help. The National Federation of the Blind knows that blindness doesn't have to keep you from living the life you want. We invite you to learn more about us and how we can help at nfb.org. The National Federation of the Blind. Live the life you want.
Hey, it's me, your cell phone. We need to talk about something serious. I know you love me. I know you like using me wherever you are, but I feel like this isn't working out when you're driving. I know you may think that it's possible to focus both on me and the road, but I just don't feel the same way. I think we should spend time away from each other when you're driving. It's for the best.
Visit StopTextStopWrecks.org, a message brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, Project Yellow Light, and the Ad Council.
We now return to Your Family's Health on the Voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC.
Thanks for being with us today. This is Jeanine Cook-Garard from the nursing department here at Nassau Community College, along with co-host Virginia Gavin. And today we're talking about nursing in media with Barbara Glickstein, who is a public health nurse, health reporter, and media strategist, and founder of Barbara Glickstein Strategies. Welcome back, Barbara.
Thank you. Good to be back.
So you mentioned about competencies in media that nurses should engage in. Tell me, what are the competencies and how would we itemize a competency, and what does that entail when you say having proficiency in being represented in the media as a nurse?
My experience doing media training for the last 10 to 12 years is having nurses in the room, and in a feminist process, which I very much believe is why this is a successful model of media training, is I help to support them to create a media plan or a media message plan with an action that they want to be delivered based on what they're speaking to the journalists about. So, for example, mostly all of the nurses who show up, including the novice nurse and the nursing student, already have a level of expertise. It's very difficult to be a nursing student. It's very hard work. It's very, very, very serious intellectual discourse and scholarship and learning. So I really believe that nursing students already have a level of expertise, not only based expertise on the years of being a nurse in practice or as a politician or as an economist, or nurse lawyer, but by virtue of what they've been exposed to already as a student. And they come to that experience with their own story. Many times I'll talk to them about their story and how did they land in the School of Nursing? How did they come to Nassau Community College School of Nursing, and what is everything that they're bringing with them? So that's the nursing student and perhaps the nurse novice. That expertise, and the other thing I'm going to say, which is pretty common knowledge, is that often women have a hard time calling themselves experts, and nurses have a hard time calling themselves experts. I've heard stories from journalists who've called a nurse to be a source in a health news story, and they've said, well, I know this, but the physician, Dr. So-and-so, might be better to speak to. Well, please stop doing that. The journalist is calling you because I referred them there, or someone else referred them there, or they found you because of your expertise. So learning the skills of messaging and being able to articulate, sometimes in less than 2 minutes or 3 minutes, what are the key points about your message? What is the audience, and who is the audience that you're speaking to? Frame that messaging for that audience. And certainly if you want them to do something, let's say it's to reauthorize the Child Health Act, or CHIP, Child Health Improvement Act, which luckily just got passed, but it took quite a while. Then you want to say to the listening audience, here's why this is the issue. Here's what CHIP has done in the community that I know I serve and the families that live in the community I serve. And here's what you need to do. Call your elected official and be sure to ask them to vote yes on the reauthorization. So it's a very simple skill set that requires practice and building confidence. And I believe that those ingredients are what are creating, and what I've seen, nurses stepping up both to the mic, stepping up on social media and using social media like Twitter to advance the role of nursing, using the right hashtags so that they're not just talking to each other in nursing, but maybe it's on the issue of CHIP, or we know that Congresswoman Underwood just spoke at the American Academy of Nursing, and she said nursing is political. And whatever side of the aisle you're on, this is not about there being a partisan, this is about bipartisanship. And all nurses are very intimately knowledgeable of what's going on in their community, in their state, in their region, and in the nation. And there are almost 4 million of us. Imagine if we all stood up and spoke about what we knew.
The World Health Organization has designated the year 2020 as the Year of the Nurse and Midwife in honor of the 200th birth anniversary of Florence Nightingale. Would increasing the number of nurses used as sources in health news nationally and globally raise the status of nursing as a profession and improve the health of the public?
I believe we should take every opportunity to raise the platform of nursing. And yes, it's the first time that the World Health Organization has stepped forward and declared it's the Year of the Nurse and the Midwife. It starts this January. So we have a couple of months to all prep as to what we're going to do in our schools, in our institutions, in our communities. It might be that someone who's listening who is a nurse has always wanted to address the members of her church or of her synagogue or of the temple that she prays in. Or maybe it's at her child's school district. Or maybe they don't have a child, but they want to make themselves available to the school nurse that's probably very overworked and underrepresented in schools. Step up. The Year of the Nurse is a platform that, in addition to when you step up and decide what it is that you want to do, you can contact your local reporter, either on radio or in print, on digital, or even on television, and tell them you have a story that you'd like to pitch to them. It's the Year of the Nurse 2020, and you'd like to give them a window and a snapshot into what some of the things nurses are doing today so that they can diversify their stories and start changing who's telling them. Right? Nurses have absolutely all these opportunities to diversify nurse sources in the health news media, and this is a great opportunity.
So what do you think, as nurses, what do you think we give that is very unique in comparison to a physician or other health team members? What do you think nurses give?
I think nurses are really equipped to tell compelling stories about not only individuals, and not only about their disease, but really about the whole picture, right? We have an opportunity to talk about complex health problems that are not just the disease, but people who are also living with social stresses like poverty, disadvantage, inequality, racism, homophobia, transphobia. All of those issues we know when we are speaking about a family that we are caring for or the person in that family that we're caring for. I believe nurses break down silos and they engage each person and they look at them as an individual and they ask questions that sometimes really get to what it is that person needs on their path to health. So I think we have developed and created models that make those who are invisible visible, and how the current system is failing many people. I believe that we can make people where they live and where they work and where they play feel a better part of their community by passing the mic to them sometimes and letting them have their own voice. So if you're making media, bring those folks on and let them speak about their own situations. I think nurses do that. And with all respect to my physician colleagues, that's not their focus. Most of their focus is disease-oriented, and we are more whole person and whole population oriented.
What is your website for people to get more information about your company, Barbara Glickstein Strategies, and your podcast, HealthCetera?
You can find all of that information on barbaraglickstein.com. That's BarbaraGlickstein.com.
And if you had to leave us with some parting information, what would you want the listeners to know about what you do is in your role and what you do for the community and what you're doing for the profession?
I believe that we can create a strong, active movement that will look at the issues that we know are failing the people we have the privilege to serve. And by our uniting in strength, in numbers and passion and commitment to human rights, to addressing racism, both structural racism in the institutions that currently exist in our daily lives, that we can be a force if we unite and we step ahead and not feel isolated. I believe that we can change the conversation. And when we increase the diversity of our voices in the health news media as nurses, we are really adding to a vibrant democracy and a more informed public.
Thank you so much for being here, Barbara Glickstein. Thank you for all those that are listening. This is Dr. Jeanine Cook-Garard from the nursing department here at Nassau Community College, along with my co-host, Virginia Gavin. And we thank you for listening to this week's edition of Your Family's Health.
We'd like to get your feedback on your family's health. Send your comments by emailing them to whpc@ncc.edu. Podcasts of today's show are available on iTunes, Android Podcasts, and Spreaker. This program was produced at the studios of Nassau Community College in cooperation with the nursing department. Join us next week for another edition of Your Family's Health on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC.